The phone rang at exactly 1 in the morning, cutting through the silence of my hotel room like a chainsaw through butter. I'd been lying there in the dark, staring at the ceiling of another generic business hotel, thinking about home, about Alicia, about how she'd seemed distant lately, how her smiles had become as fake as a politician's promises. I fumbled for the phone, squinting at the screen. Home. Of course it was home. "Hey, babe," I said, my voice thick with sleep. "Everything okay?" But it wasn't Alicia's voice that answered. "She's busy right now," a man's voice said, low and amused. "She'll call you back later." In the background, I could hear her laughing. Not the polite laugh she used at dinner parties, but the real one, the one I hadn't heard in months. "Who is this?" I asked, though part of me already knew. "Keep her," I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. "She's your problem now." I hung up and set the phone on the nightstand, my hands steady as stone. Greg Foster, 38 years old, regional manager for a restaurant chain, sitting in a Holiday Inn in Cleveland, Ohio, learning that his wife of 12 years was apparently hosting her own private party. The silence that followed was beautiful. I'd always been the underdog, in school, in business, in life. People looked at me and saw average height, average build, average everything. They missed the fact that I'd boxed in college, that I'd worked my way up from washing dishes to running operations for 3 states. They underestimated me. Alicia had just made the same mistake. I lay back down and closed my eyes, already planning. Tomorrow, I drive home to our little slice of suburban paradise in Millbrook, Indiana. Population 30,000, where everybody knew everybody's business, and gossip traveled faster than a speeding ticket. At least she's multitasking, I thought. Homewrecker and comedian. The next morning, I called my assistant and told her I was cutting the trip short. Family emergency, not exactly a lie. I drove the 4 hours home in my sensible sedan, listening to talk radio and thinking about the last few months. The late nights Alicia claimed were work meetings, the new clothes, the gym membership she'd suddenly developed an interest in. I pulled into our driveway at 2 in the afternoon. Alicia's car wasn't there, but that wasn't surprising. She was probably at her best friend Susie's house, planning her next move. The house felt different when I walked in. Not just empty, but hollow, like someone had sucked the life out of it. I found the note on the kitchen counter, propped against the coffee maker like a surrender flag. "Greg, I need some space to figure things out. I'll be staying with Susie for a while. We'll talk soon." A. Space. Right. The kind of space that apparently included strange men answering her phone at 1 in the morning. I walked through our house, really looking at it for the first time in years. The wedding photos on the mantel, both of us young and stupid and thinking we had it all figured out. The couch we'd picked out together, where we used to watch movies on Sunday afternoons. The kitchen where she used to cook, back when she still pretended to care about playing house. I made myself a sandwich and sat at the kitchen table, eating methodically while I planned my next moves. Alicia thought she was smart, but she'd made one crucial error. She'd forgotten that I was the one who handled our finances. Every account, every credit card, every investment was in my name. She'd been so busy playing the devoted wife that she'd never bothered to establish her own financial independence. That was about to become a problem for her. I spent the afternoon making phone calls, bank accounts frozen, credit cards canceled, the joint savings account, which contained about $40,000, transferred to a new account in my name only. All perfectly legal, since everything was in my name anyway. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Then I went through her things. Not like a crazy person, just methodically, like I was conducting an inventory. I found her backup phone in her jewelry box, the one she thought I didn't know about. The screen lit up when I touched it, and I found myself looking at a group chat called Operation Freedom. The participants were Alicia, Susie, and someone named Dominic. I scrolled through the messages, my sandwich turning to cardboard in my mouth. Alicia: Greg's in Cleveland until Friday. Perfect timing. Dominic: can't wait to see you again. Last night was incredible. Susie: just remember the plan. We need to make this look like his fault. Alicia: don't worry, I've got it all figured out. Greg's so predictable. Dominic: what if he fights the divorce? Susie: he won't. He's too much of a pushover. Always has been. Alicia: even if he does, we have the backup plan. A few bruises, a police report, and he loses everything. I set the phone down carefully, my hands still steady. So it wasn't just an affair, it was a setup. They were planning to frame me, take everything I'd worked for, and leave me with nothing. The thing about being underestimated your whole life is that you learn to watch and wait. You learn to see the angles other people miss, and right now, I could see an angle they'd never considered. I was the only one who knew about the backup phone. I took photos of every message, every photo, every voice note. Then I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it and went to make more calls. By evening, I'd accomplished quite a bit. Alicia's gym membership canceled. Her spa appointments canceled. Her credit at the boutique downtown where she bought her fancy clothes revoked. The subscription services she loved terminated. The weekly cleaning service discontinued. I wasn't being vindictive. I was being practical. If she wanted space, she could have all the space she wanted. She just wouldn't be doing it on my dime. My phone buzzed. A text from Richard, my oldest friend. Heard Alicia's staying at Susie's. You okay? I stared at the message. In a town like Millbrook, news traveled fast. By tomorrow, everyone would know my wife had left me. They'd whisper about it at the grocery store, discuss it over coffee at the diner, speculate about what I'd done wrong. They had no idea what was coming. I texted back, Never better. Want to grab a drink tomorrow? Sure. Mickey's at 7? Perfect. I made myself dinner and ate it while reading through more messages on Alicia's secret phone. The affair had been going on for 3 months. Dominic Vega, married to Susie, worked as a foreman at the manufacturing plant outside town. 36 years old, divorced once already, the kind of guy who thought muscles and attitude could substitute for brains. He was about to learn otherwise. The messages painted a picture of a man who thought he'd hit the jackpot, a bored housewife with money and connections, willing to risk everything for a few hours of excitement. He had no idea he was being used as much as I was. Susie, on the other hand, was the real architect. She'd been planting seeds in Alicia's mind for months, convincing her that she deserved better, that I was holding her back, that she could have it all if she just had the courage to take it. What none of them realized was that I'd been watching, waiting, learning. I'd grown up poor, the son of a single mother who worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat. I'd learned early that life wasn't fair, that good things didn't just happen to good people, and that sometimes you had to fight for what was yours. I'd boxed in college not because I loved the sport, but because I needed the scholarship money. I'd worked in restaurant kitchens not because I enjoyed the heat and pressure, but because it was honest work that paid the bills. I'd married Alicia not because she was the prettiest girl in town, but because I thought we wanted the same things. Turns out, I was wrong about that last part. I finished my dinner and cleaned up, washing the dishes by hand the way my mother had taught me. Then I sat in my living room and started making a list. Not a revenge list, exactly, more like a business plan. Alicia thought she knew me, thought I was predictable, boring, safe, the kind of man who would roll over and let her take everything without a fight. She was about to discover that she'd confuse quiet with weak. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Greg, this is Dominic. The voice from last night, cocky and pleased with himself. We need to talk. Do we? I leaned back in my chair, genuinely curious about where this was going. Look, man, I know this is awkward, but Alicia and we're in love. Real love. I think it's better if we handle this like adults. Handle what exactly? The divorce. The house. All that stuff. Alicia says you're a reasonable guy. We don't want this to get messy. I almost laughed. They wanted me to make it easy for them. Hand over my life's work with a smile and a handshake. You know what, Dominic? You're absolutely right. No point in making this messy. Great. I knew you'd see reason. Alicia will be so relieved. I'm sure she will be. Tell me, how long have you two been planning this? A pause. Planning what? Come on, Dom. Can I call you Dom? We're practically family now. How long have you been planning to take everything I've worked for? I don't know what you mean. Sure you do. The fake abuse claims, the police reports, the whole thing. Pretty elaborate for a guy who can barely spell his own name. Another pause, longer this time. I think you've been drinking, Greg. Stone sober, actually, but don't worry about it. Like you said, no point in making this messy. I'll be in touch. I hung up before he could respond and sat there in the quiet of my house thinking about my next move. They expected me to be angry, to make threats, to do something stupid that would play into their hands. Instead, I was going to give them exactly what they wanted. A reasonable, predictable response from a reasonable, predictable man. Right up until I wasn't. I went to bed early that night, sleeping better than I had in months. Tomorrow the real fun would begin. I woke up at 6, made coffee, and read the messages that had accumulated overnight on Alicia's secret phone. Dominic had called her 3 times after our conversation, increasingly agitated. Susie had sent a long voice message about keeping Greg under control. Alicia had responded with laughing emojis and a message that made my coffee taste bitter. Don't worry about Greg. He's always been all bark and no bite. All bark and no bite. 12 years of marriage, and that's what she thought of me. I got dressed in my usual work clothes, khakis, button-down shirt, nothing fancy, and drove to Mickey's Diner for breakfast. Mickey's was the nerve center of Millbrook's gossip network, where the morning coffee crowd gathered to dissect the previous day's drama and speculate about who was sleeping with whom. I ordered my usual scrambled eggs, wheat toast, black coffee, and listened to the conversations around me. It didn't take long. Did you hear about Greg Foster? Betty Martinez, who ran the flower shop, was talking to her sister Carol. His wife left him yesterday. I heard she's staying with Susie Vega, Carol replied. Must be pretty bad if she can't even stay in her own house. Susie's husband works out at that gym downtown, Betty continued. Big guy, you know? Maybe Greg got violent. I kept eating, my expression neutral, while they painted me as the villain in my own story. This was how it worked in small towns. Someone left, someone stayed, and everybody picked sides based on incomplete information and personal prejudices. Morning, Greg. Mickey himself appeared at my table, coffee pot in hand. He was 73 years old and had been running this place since before I was born. How you holding up? Can't complain, Mickey. Beautiful morning. He studied my face, looking for cracks in the facade. Alicia doing okay? She's figuring some things out. You know how it is. I do indeed. He topped off my coffee and moved on, but I could feel him watching me from behind the counter. Mickey had seen every kind of human drama play out in his diner over the decades. He knew the difference between a man who was broken and a man who was planning. I finished my breakfast and left a generous tip, nodding to Betty and Carol on my way out. They stopped talking when they saw me, offering awkward smiles and mumbled greetings. Let them wonder. My next stop was the bank, where I had a 9 o'clock appointment with Janet Morrison, the branch manager. Janet had handled our accounts for years, and she greeted me with the careful sympathy reserved for the recently abandoned. Greg, I'm so sorry to hear about your situation. Thanks, Janet. I appreciate that. I need to make some changes to our accounts. We spent an hour going through the paperwork, everything transferred to my name only, new passwords, new security questions, all perfectly legal since I'd been the primary account holder from the beginning. What about Alicia's access? Janet asked. Suspended, effective immediately. She can open her own accounts when she's ready. Janet nodded, making notes. She'd handled enough divorces to know the drill. Will she be surprised by this? Probably, but she's a smart woman. She'll figure it out. By 10:30, I was done at the bank and ready for the next phase. I drove to Alicia's office, a small marketing firm that specialized in local businesses. The receptionist, a young woman named Tracy, looked uncomfortable when she saw me. Hi, Mr. Foster. Alicia's not in today. I know. I actually wanted to speak with Bob. Bob Hendricks owned the firm and had been Alicia's boss for 5 years. He was a decent guy, straightforward and honest, which made him terrible at office politics but good at running a business. Greg. He came out of his office with his hand extended. Good to see you. How are you holding up? Better than expected, actually. Can we talk privately? We went into his office, and Bob closed the door. Listen, I don't know what's going on between you and Alicia, but she's been distracted lately. Her work's been slipping. How so? Missing deadlines, showing up late, leaving early. And yesterday she called in sick, but Tracy saw her at lunch with some guy downtown. I nodded sympathetically. That would be Dominic Vega. They've been having an affair for 3 months. Bob's face went through several expressions before settling on resignation. Well, that explains a lot. There's more. I pulled out my phone and showed him some of the messages from Alicia's secret phone. Nothing too personal, just enough to establish the timeline and the deception. Bob read them with increasing dismay. She's been using company time for this? Looks that way. And Bob, I need you to know. She's planning to claim I was abusive. It's all part of their strategy to take everything in the divorce. Jesus, Greg, I'm sorry. Don't be sorry, just be careful. She might try to drag the company into this somehow, claim workplace stress or discrimination. I wanted you to have a heads up. Bob nodded grimly. I appreciate that. And Greg, if you need a reference or anything, you let me know. I left Bob's office feeling lighter. One potential ally secured, and Alicia's professional reputation about to take a hit when Bob started paying closer attention to her work habits. My phone buzzed with a text from Richard. Lunch today? Heard you might need to talk. I texted back, Sure, 1 o'clock at Rosie's. Rosie's was a bar and grill on the other side of town, far enough from Mickey's and the main drag to have a different crowd, more blue-collar, less gossip-oriented, the kind of place where Dominic Vega might feel comfortable. I spent the morning at home, going through more of Alicia's things. In her dresser, I found receipts for lingerie I'd never seen her wear. In her closet, I discovered a whole section of clothes that were definitely not her usual style. Tighter, more revealing, the kind of outfits designed to get attention. I also found a pregnancy test, still in the box, hidden behind her shoes. That stopped me cold. We'd been trying to have kids for years, with no success. The doctors said there was nothing wrong with either of us, that sometimes these things just took time. But Alicia had stopped talking about it months ago, claiming she was too stressed with work to think about starting a family. Now I wondered if she'd been taking precautions I didn't know about. I put everything back exactly where I'd found it and headed to lunch with Richard. Richard Kowalski had been my best friend since high school. He was one of those guys who seemed to coast through life on charm and luck, but underneath the easy smile was a sharp mind and a loyal heart. He'd married his college sweetheart, Nikki, and they had 2 kids and a mortgage and all the normal problems of normal people. He was already at Rosie's when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with 2 beers on the table. "You look good," he said as I sat down. "Better than I expected." "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Crying, maybe. Drinking heavily. Threatening to burn everything down. Sorry to disappoint you." Richard studied me over his beer. "Nikki's worried about you. She thinks you're in shock or something." "Tell Nikki I appreciate the concern, but I'm fine." "Are you, though? Because this whole situation is pretty screwed up, even by Millbrook standards." I took a long drink of my beer, choosing my words carefully. "You remember Halloween? The party at your house?" "Yeah, what about it?" "You remember how Alicia and Susie showed up in those matching outfits?" Richard nodded. "The Catwoman thing. Pretty hot, actually. Don't tell Nikki I said that." "You remember how they spent most of the night flirting with Dominic Vega?" I remember thinking it was weird. Yeah. I mean, Susie's married to the guy, and Alicia's married to you, but people get weird at parties sometimes. They disappeared into the kitchen together at one point, all 3 of them. Richard's expression changed as he remembered. "Yeah, they did. We joked about it, remember? Something about a threesome. Turns out it wasn't a joke. I told him about the phone call, the messages, the whole elaborate plan." Richard listened without interrupting, his face growing darker with each detail. "Those manipulative witches," he said finally. "Greg, you have to fight this. You can't let them get away with it." "Who says I'm letting them get away with anything?" "What do you mean?" I smiled, and Richard actually leaned back in his seat. "Let's just say I'm not as predictable as they think I am." We finished our beers and ordered lunch. While we waited for our food, Richard filled me in on the local gossip network's take on my situation. "Most people think Alicia left because you were working too much," he said. "The general consensus is that you're a good guy who got too focused on his career and neglected his wife. That's not terrible. Betty Martinez thinks you hit her. Betty Martinez thinks the mailman is stealing her magazines. Her opinion doesn't carry much weight." "Maybe not, but people talk, Greg. And in a town this size, talk can hurt you." "Let them talk. They'll have plenty to discuss soon enough." Richard gave me another one of those looks. "What are you planning?" "Nothing illegal, nothing violent, just giving them exactly what they want." "Which is?" "A divorce. A clean break. A chance to start over with their true love." "That doesn't sound like you." "Maybe you don't know me as well as you think you do." Our food arrived, and we ate in relative silence. Richard kept glancing at me like he was trying to solve a puzzle, but I gave him nothing else to work with. After lunch, I drove home and found Alicia's car in the driveway. She was sitting at the kitchen table, looking through a stack of papers with an expression I'd never seen before. Not angry, exactly, more like confused. "Hi," she said when I walked in. "We need to talk." "Sure. How was your stay at Susie's?" "Fine. Greg, what did you do to our accounts?" I sat down across from her, noting how different she looked. Her hair was styled differently, and she was wearing one of those new outfits I'd found in her closet. She looked good, I had to admit. Younger, more vibrant, like she'd been sleeping better. "I secured our assets," I said calmly. "Standard procedure in these situations." "What situations?" "Divorce proceedings. Isn't that what this is?" She stared at me for a long moment. "I never said anything about divorce." "You didn't have to. The note was pretty clear. You need space. You're staying with friends. We'll talk soon. That's divorce talk, Alicia. I've been married to you for 12 years. I know how you communicate. I just need time to think." "About what? Whether you want to keep having an affair with Dominic Vega or make it official?" Her face went pale, but she recovered quickly. "I don't know what you're talking about." Sure you do. 3 months, right? Started around the time you joined that gym. Susie set it up, probably told you that you deserved better, that life was passing you by. Greg, the thing is, Alicia, I don't actually care. You want out? Fine. You want to be with Dominic? Great. But you're not going to take everything I've worked for in the process. She stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. You can't just freeze me out of our accounts. That money is half mine. Actually, it's not. Check the paperwork. Everything's in my name, always has been. You never bothered to establish independent finances because you were too busy playing housewife. I'll get a lawyer. Good idea. You'll need one. She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. What happened to you? Nothing happened to me. I just stopped pretending that this marriage was something it wasn't. We can work this out, Greg. We can go to counseling, figure out what went wrong. What went wrong is that you decided to have an affair and frame me for abuse so you could take everything in the divorce. That's not a marriage problem, Alicia. That's a character problem. Her face went completely white this time. How did you? Your backup phone. The one you keep in your jewelry box. Operation Freedom. Remember? Pretty creative name for a conspiracy. She sat back down heavily, all the fight going out of her. Greg, let me explain. No need. I understand perfectly. You're bored, you want excitement, you think you deserve better. Dominic makes you feel young and desired, and Susie convinced you that I'm the reason you're not happy. It's not that simple. Sure it is. You made your choice. Now you get to live with the consequences. I stood up and walked to the counter, where I'd left a manila envelope. Divorce papers. Already filed. You can contest it if you want, but I have documentation of the affair, the planning, and the attempted fraud. Sir, your choice. She opened the envelope with shaking hands, scanning the documents. This is everything. The house, the accounts, the investments. You can keep your car and your personal belongings. That seems fair. Fair? Greg, this is our life. Everything we built together. Everything I built while you played supportive wife. There's a difference. She looked up at me, and for a moment I saw the woman I'd married. Young, hopeful, full of dreams about the future we'd build together. Then the moment passed, and she was just another stranger who'd tried to take advantage of my good nature. I won't sign this, she said. That's your right. But the alternative is a contested divorce where all of this becomes public record. The affair, the planning, the fake abuse allegations. In a town this size, that kind of scandal follows you forever. You wouldn't. Try me. She stared at the papers for another long moment, then looked back at me. I never meant for it to go this far. Yes, you did. You just never meant to get caught. She gathered up the papers and stood up. I need to think about this. Take all the time you need. But Alicia, don't come back here. This isn't your home anymore. She left without another word, and I watched through the window as she sat in her car for several minutes, probably calling Susie or Dominic or both. My phone rang. Richard. Nikki wants to invite you for dinner tonight. She's worried you're not eating. Tell her thanks, but I'm fine. Actually, I'm better than fine. Greg, whatever you're planning. I'm not planning anything, Richard. I'm just done being the nice guy who finishes last. I hung up and looked around my house. My house now, legally and practically. It felt different already, like the air was cleaner. Tomorrow, things would start getting interesting. I spent that evening going through Alicia's secret phone more thoroughly, taking screenshots of everything and organizing them into folders on my laptop. The affair was just the tip of the iceberg. There were messages about my work schedule, my habits, my friends. They'd been planning this for months, studying me like I was some kind of lab rat. But they'd missed something crucial. They'd underestimated how much I'd learned about patience and strategy from years of managing restaurant operations. You don't survive in that business without knowing how to handle difficult people, manage crises, and think 3 steps ahead. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Susie. We need to talk. I ignored it and kept working. By morning, I had a complete dossier on their operation. Screenshots, timeline, voice messages, even some photos that Dominic had sent to Alicia that were definitely not appropriate for a married woman to receive. I got dressed for work. I still had a job to do, after all, and drove to the office. My assistant, Marie, looked at me with the same careful sympathy I'd been getting from everyone lately. How are you holding up, Mr. Foster? Just fine, Marie. Any urgent messages? Your wife called yesterday afternoon. She seemed upset about something. I'm sure she did. If she calls again, take a message. I spent the morning in meetings, reviewing quarterly reports and discussing expansion plans for the next fiscal year. Normal business, the kind of routine that had always grounded me. My colleagues were professional enough not to ask about my personal situation, but I could feel their curiosity. At lunch, I drove to the manufacturing plant where Dominic worked. It was a sprawling complex on the outskirts of town, the kind of place that employed half the blue-collar workers in Millbrook. I parked in the visitor lot and walked into the main office. "I'm here to see Tom Bradley," I told the receptionist. Tom was the plant manager, a guy I'd known casually for years through various business association meetings. He came out to greet me with a puzzled expression. "Greg Foster, what brings you out here?" "I wanted to talk to you about one of your employees, Dominic Vega." Tom's expression became more guarded. "What about him? Can we talk privately?" We went into his office, and Tom closed the door. "Is Dom in some kind of trouble?" "That depends on your definition of trouble. Tom, I need you to know that Dominic has been having an affair with my wife." Tom winced. "Ah, hell, Greg, I'm sorry." "It gets worse. They've been using company time to coordinate their meetings. I have documentation if you need to see it." I showed him some of the messages, the ones that referenced Dominic's work schedule and break times. Tom read them with increasing displeasure. "This is not good," he said finally. "There's more. They're planning to frame me for domestic abuse as part of their divorce strategy. Dominic's been discussing it in detail, including how he plans to back up my wife's claims." Tom set down the phone and rubbed his face. "Greg, this is a serious accusation. It's all documented. Text messages, voice recordings, the whole thing. I'm not asking you to fire him, Tom. I'm just giving you a heads up about what kind of person you have working for you." "I appreciate that. And Greg, I'm really sorry this happened to you." "Thanks. Just keep an eye on things, okay? A guy who's willing to help frame an innocent man for abuse might not be the most trustworthy employee." I left the plant feeling satisfied. Tom Bradley ran a tight operation, and he wouldn't tolerate employees who brought drama and potential legal liability to his workplace. My next stop was the gym where Alicia had been working out, a place called Iron Paradise that catered to the serious fitness crowd, the kind of place where guys like Dominic went to show off their muscles and hit on bored housewives. The manager, a woman named Linda, recognized me from Alicia's membership application. "Mr. Foster, how can I help you?" "I need to cancel my wife's membership. We're getting divorced." "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. She seemed like such a nice woman." "She has her moments. Linda, I need to ask you something, and I hope you'll be honest with me. Has she been socializing with other members?" Linda looked uncomfortable. "I really can't discuss other members' activities." "I'm not asking you to gossip. I'm asking because there might be legal implications. My wife has been having an affair with someone she met here, and now they're planning to make false accusations against me." "False accusations?" "Domestic abuse. It's all part of their strategy to take everything in the divorce." Linda's expression hardened. "We have a strict policy about members using the facility for inappropriate purposes." "I'm sure you do, and I'm sure you keep security cameras in the common areas." "We do." "Those recordings might be important if this goes to court. Just something to keep in mind." I left the gym knowing that Linda would be watching Alicia and Dominic much more carefully if they continued their workouts there. The afternoon was spent making more calls and visits. Alicia's hairdresser, her favorite restaurant, the boutique where she bought her clothes. I wasn't trying to destroy her life exactly. I was just making sure that everyone in her social circle knew what kind of person they were dealing with. By 5 o'clock, I was ready for the next phase. I drove to Susie's house, a modest ranch-style place in one of the older neighborhoods. Alicia's car was in the driveway, along with a pickup truck that probably belonged to Dominic. I parked across the street and called the house. "Hello?" Susie's voice wary. "Hi, Susie. This is Greg. I got your message yesterday." "Greg, we really need to talk. This whole situation is getting out of hand." "I agree. Why don't you and Alicia and Dominic come outside? I'm parked across the street." A long pause. "You're here?" "Wave to the security camera on your porch. I want to make sure this conversation is recorded." I could hear voices in the background, urgent whispers, and what sounded like an argument. Finally, the front door opened, and all three of them came out onto the porch. Alicia looked terrible. Her hair was disheveled, and she was wearing the same clothes from yesterday. Susie looked angry, her arms crossed and her jaw set. Dominic looked like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. I got out of my car and walked across the street, stopping at the edge of their driveway. "Nice little meeting you've got going here," I said. "Planning your next move?" "Greg, please," Alicia started. "We can work this out." "Can we? Because yesterday you told me you wouldn't sign the divorce papers. Today I hear you've been calling my office, my friends, my colleagues, telling them I'm having some kind of breakdown." Susie stepped forward. "You are having a breakdown. Look what you've done to Alicia. She can't even access her own money." "Her own money?" Susie, your friend has never had a job that lasted more than 2 years. Every penny in those accounts came from my work. Marriage is a partnership, Dominic said, speaking for the first time. She contributed too. I looked at him, really looked at him. He was a big guy, probably 6'2" and well-muscled from his gym workouts, the kind of man who was used to intimidating people with his size. Dominic, right? We talked on the phone the other night. Yeah, we did. Tell me something. When you're helping my wife plan to frame me for domestic abuse, do you ever think about what that might do to an innocent man's life? His face flushed red. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. A few bruises, a police report, and he loses everything. Ring any bells? The three of them exchanged glances, and I could see the moment they realized I had access to their private communications. You've been reading our messages, Susie said. Every single one. Voice recordings, too. Very educational. That's illegal, Alicia said. You can't use stolen communications in court. Actually, I can. The phone was in my house, and technically, since we're still married, I have legal access to any communications devices on the property. I checked with a lawyer. That was a lie, but they didn't know that. What do you want, Greg? Susie asked. I want you to understand that your little plan isn't going to work. I want Alicia to sign the divorce papers and walk away with her dignity intact. And I want all three of you to stay away from me, my house, my workplace, and my friends. And if we don't? Dominic stepped forward, trying to use his size to intimidate me. I smiled at him, the same smile I used to give opponents in the boxing ring right before I knocked them down. Then I release everything to the public. Every message, every photo, every voice recording. In a town this size, that kind of scandal follows you forever. You wouldn't, Alicia said. Try me. I turned and walked back to my car, leaving them standing on the porch. As I drove away, I could see them in my rearview mirror, huddled together in urgent conversation. My phone rang before I'd gone 2 blocks. Greg? Alicia's voice shaky now. Can we meet somewhere private? Just you and me? Why? Because I want to end this before it gets any worse. Rosie's bar, 1 hour. I hung up and drove home to change clothes. The next conversation was going to determine whether this ended quietly or became the biggest scandal in Millbrook's recent history. Either way, I was ready. Alicia was already at Rosie's when I arrived, sitting in the same corner booth where I'd had lunch with Richard the day before. She looked smaller somehow, diminished, like the weight of her choices was finally settling on her shoulders. I ordered a beer and sat across from her, waiting for her to speak first. I'll sign the papers, she said finally. Good choice. But I want some things, personal items, photos, my grandmother's jewelry. That's reasonable. Make a list. She pulled out a folded piece of paper. I already did. I read through it. Mostly sentimental items, nothing of significant financial value. This looks fine. Anything else? I want you to promise me something. I'm listening. Don't release those messages. Please. It would destroy Susie's marriage, ruin Dominic's job, make me unemployable in this town. I took a long drink of my beer, considering her request. Why should I care about any of that? Because you're not a cruel person, Greg. You're angry, and you have every right to be. But destroying our lives won't make you feel better. You were planning to destroy mine. I know, and I'm sorry. I got caught up in something that felt exciting and new, and I lost sight of what was important. What was important, Alicia? She looked down at her hands. Our marriage. The life we built together. The future we could have had. The future where you framed me for domestic abuse? That was never going to happen. It was just talk. Fantasy. We were angry and stupid and caught up in the drama of it all. I studied her face, looking for signs of deception. You really believe that, don't you? Yes. Then you're more naive than I thought. Susie was serious about that plan. So was Dominic. They were using you, Alicia. You were just too flattered by the attention to see it. Her eyes filled with tears. Maybe you're right, but it doesn't matter now. It's over. Is it? Because last I heard, you were still staying at Susie's house, still playing house with your boyfriend. That's over too. After what you said today, I realized how far this had gone, how much damage we'd done. I finished my beer and signaled for another one. So, what's your plan now? I don't know. Find an apartment, I guess. Start over. With what money? I'll get a job. A real job. Something that pays enough to live on. Good luck with that. Your reputation in this town is pretty much shot. I know. We sat in silence for a few minutes, the weight of 12 years of marriage settling between us like a stone. Can I ask you something? She said finally. Sure. When did you stop loving me? The question caught me off guard. I'd been expecting anger, negotiations, maybe more lies, not this quiet, honest vulnerability. I don't think I ever did, I said truthfully. But I stopped trusting you. And without trust, love doesn't mean much. When? Honestly, months ago. Little things that didn't add up. New clothes, changed passwords, late nights that didn't make sense. I knew something was wrong, but I kept hoping I was paranoid. Why didn't you say anything? Because I was afraid of this exact conversation. I was afraid that if I confronted you, you'd leave. So instead, you waited for me to betray you completely. I didn't wait for anything. I just hoped that whatever was happening would run its course and you'd come back to us. There is no us anymore, is there? No, there isn't. She signed the divorce papers right there at the table, using a pen borrowed from the bartender. 12 years of marriage ended with a few signatures on legal documents in a bar that smelled like beer and fried food. What happens now? She asked. Now you move on with your life, and I move on with mine? Will you keep those messages private? I considered the question seriously. The vindictive part of me wanted to release everything, to make sure the whole town knew what kind of people they really were. But the practical part of me knew that revenge was a dish best served strategically. As long as you stay away from me and don't cause any more problems, your secrets are safe. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. If you or your friends try to retaliate in any way, all bets are off. She nodded and gathered up her copy of the papers. I'll get my things this weekend when you're not home. That works. She stood up to leave, then paused. Greg, for what it's worth, I really am sorry. I know you are, but sorry doesn't fix anything. She left, and I sat there finishing my beer, feeling strangely empty. I'd won, if you could call it that. The house, the money, the moral high ground. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like the end of something that should have been better. My phone buzzed with a text from Richard. Heard Alicia was at Rosie's. You okay? I texted back, It's over. She signed. Want company? Not tonight. Tomorrow, maybe. I finished my beer and drove home, noting that Alicia's car was no longer at Susie's house. Maybe she'd meant what she said about it being over. I spent the evening boxing up her remaining belongings, the things that weren't on her list but that she'd probably want eventually, photo albums, books, small decorations that had been hers before we got married. I was methodical about it, treating it like any other project that needed to be completed efficiently. Around 10 o'clock, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw Dominic standing on my porch, alone. I opened the door but left the chain lock engaged. What do you want? We need to talk, man to man. I think we've said everything that needs saying. Come on, Greg, 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I unlatched the chain and opened the door. Dominic stepped inside, looking around at my house like he was appraising it. Nice place, he said. Thanks. What do you want, Dominic? I want to make sure we understand each other. I think we do. See, here's the thing. You think you won something here, but you didn't. You lost your wife, your marriage, everything that mattered. And for what? Money? A house? That stuff doesn't keep you warm at night. I looked at him carefully. He was trying to provoke me, get me to do something stupid that would give them ammunition. Is there a point to this? The point is that Alicia's going to realize she made a mistake. She's going to want to come back, and when she does, I don't want you making it difficult for her. Alicia made her choice. So did you. Live with it. What if I don't want to live with it? Then that's your problem, not mine. He stepped closer, using his size to try to intimidate me. You know, accidents happen sometimes. Guys like you, living alone in big houses like this, anything could happen. I smiled at him, the same smile I'd used earlier. Dominic, let me explain something to you. I've been recording this conversation since you walked in. I have security cameras covering every inch of this property. And if anything happens to me, my lawyer has instructions to release every piece of evidence I have about your little conspiracy. His face went pale. You're bluffing. Am I? You want to test that theory? He stared at me for a long moment, then stepped back. This isn't over. Yes, it is. And if you come to my house again, I'll call the police and have you arrested for trespassing. He left without another word, and I locked the door behind him. Then I called Richard. Greg, it's kind of late. Dominic Vega just threatened me in my own house. What? Are you okay? I'm fine, but I think things are about to get more complicated. Do you want me to come over? No, but keep your phone on. I might need a witness for something. Greg, what are you planning? Nothing illegal. But I think it's time to remind everyone in this town that the quiet guy isn't always the weak guy. I hung up and went to my computer, uploading the recording of Dominic's visit to a secure cloud storage account. Then I sent copies to my lawyer, my insurance agent, and Richard, with instructions to release everything if anything happened to me. Tomorrow, the gloves were coming off. I woke up early and drove to Mickey's for breakfast, arriving just as the morning coffee crowd was settling in for their daily gossip session. The conversation stopped when I walked in, and I could feel every eye in the place tracking my movement to my usual table. Mickey brought me coffee without being asked. "Morning, Greg. How you holding up?" "Better every day, Mickey. Thanks for asking." I ordered my usual breakfast and pulled out my phone, making a show of checking messages while I listened to the whispered conversations around me. The word was already out about Alicia signing the divorce papers. In a town like Millbrook, that kind of news traveled faster than a fire truck. "I heard she's moving to an apartment over on Elm Street," Betty Martinez was saying to her sister. "One of those little efficiency units above the hardware store." "Shame," Carol replied. "She had such a nice life with Greg." "Well, you make your bed, you lie in it." I finished my breakfast and left another generous tip, nodding to the other customers as I made my way out. Let them see that I was handling this with dignity and grace. Let them wonder why I seemed so calm while my world was supposedly falling apart. My next stop was the hardware store Betty had mentioned. Sure enough, there was a "for rent" sign in the window of the apartment upstairs. I went inside and asked to speak with the owner, a guy named Pete who'd been running the place for 30 years. "That apartment's already been rented," Pete said. "Lady came by yesterday afternoon with first month's rent in cash." "Alicia Foster?" "That's right. You know her?" "She's my ex-wife. Pete, I need to tell you something, and I hope you'll take it in the spirit it's intended." I gave him the abbreviated version of recent events, focusing on the affair and the attempted fraud. Pete listened with the expression of a man who'd seen every kind of human drama play out in a small town. "She seemed nice enough," he said finally. "I'm sure she did, but you might want to keep an eye on things. She's been making some poor choices lately, and I'd hate for you to get caught up in any drama." "Appreciate the heads up, Greg." I left the hardware store and drove to the manufacturing plant, parking in the visitor lot again. This time, I didn't go inside. I just sat in my car and waited. At exactly 12:15, Dominic came out for his lunch break, along with several other workers. They stood around in the parking lot smoking cigarettes and talking. I got out of my car and walked over to them. "Dominic," I called out. "Got a minute?" The other workers looked between us with interest. Word of the affair had probably reached the plant by now. "What do you want, Foster?" "I wanted to thank you for stopping by my house last night. It was very educational." Dominic's face reddened. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do. The threats, the intimidation, the whole tough guy routine. Really impressive stuff." One of the other workers, a guy I didn't recognize, stepped forward. "Dom, what's he talking about?" "Nothing. Just some misunderstanding." I pulled out my phone and played a few seconds of the recording from the night before. Dominic's voice came through clearly. "Accidents happen sometimes. Guys like you, living alone in big houses like this, anything could happen." The other workers looked at Dominic with a mixture of surprise and disgust. "Jesus, Dom?" one of them said. "You threatened the guy?" "It wasn't a threat. It was just... we were talking." "Sounded like a threat to me," I said cheerfully. "But hey, no hard feelings. I just wanted to make sure everyone knew what kind of guy you really are." I walked back to my car, leaving Dominic to explain himself to his coworkers. By the end of the day, everyone at the plant would know that he'd threatened an innocent man whose only crime was having an unfaithful wife. My phone rang as I was driving home. Tom Bradley, the plant manager. "Greg, I heard about what happened in our parking lot. Word travels fast. Dom's been suspended pending a full investigation. Threatening someone over a personal dispute is grounds for termination." "I appreciate you taking it seriously, Tom. We don't tolerate that kind of behavior here. And Greg, I'm sorry this happened to you." The afternoon was spent making more calls and visits. Alicia's new landlord, her former coworkers, the people in her social circle who might not have heard the full story yet. I wasn't spreading malicious gossip, exactly. I was just making sure everyone had access to accurate information. By 5 o'clock, I was ready for the evening's entertainment. I drove to the gym where Alicia and Dominic had been meeting, arriving just as the after-work crowd was starting their routines. I'd called ahead and spoken with Linda, the manager, who'd agreed to let me address the situation publicly. "Ladies and gentlemen," Linda announced over the sound system, "if I could have your attention for just a moment." The gym fell quiet, everyone turning to look at us. "We've recently learned that some of our members have been using our facilities for inappropriate purposes," Linda continued. "Specifically, conducting extramarital affairs, and planning fraudulent activities against other members' spouses. A murmur went through the crowd. This was better than cable television. We want everyone to know that this behavior is not tolerated at Iron Paradise, Linda said. We're a fitness facility, not a dating service for married people looking to cheat on their spouses. I stepped forward. I'm Greg Foster. Some of you might know my wife, Alicia, and her friend, Dominic Vega. They've been using this gym as a meeting place for their affair, and they've been planning to frame me for domestic abuse as part of their divorce strategy. The murmur became a buzz of shocked conversation. I'm not here to cause trouble, I continued. I just want everyone to know what kind of people they're dealing with. If someone is willing to lie about domestic abuse, what else might they be willing to lie about? I left the gym to a chorus of whispered conversations and shocked expressions. By tomorrow, everyone in town would know the full story. My phone started ringing before I reached my car. Alicia. Greg, what are you doing? Evening, Alicia. How's the new apartment? You can't do this. You can't destroy my life just because you're angry. I'm not destroying anything. I'm just sharing information. Public service, really. This has to stop. Does it? Because last night your boyfriend came to my house and threatened me. That doesn't sound like someone who's ready to let this end quietly. Dominic's an idiot. That wasn't my idea. Maybe not. But you're still with him, aren't you? Still playing house with the guy who wanted to help you frame me for a crime I didn't commit? A long pause. What do you want, Greg? I want you and your friends to disappear from my life completely. No contact, no threats, no attempts to salvage your reputations at my expense. And if we do that, you'll stop this campaign? I'll consider it. That's not good enough. It's the best offer you're going to get. She hung up, and I drove home, feeling better than I had in months. The house felt lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted from it. I was making dinner when my doorbell rang again. This time it was Susie, looking frantic and desperate. Greg, please. We need to talk. I don't think we do. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. I let her in, curious about what she had to say. You're destroying innocent people, she said as soon as the door closed. Innocent? Susie, you helped plan a conspiracy to frame me for domestic abuse. How is that innocent? It was never going to happen. We were just angry and talking crazy. Funny, that's exactly what Alicia said. Do you two rehearse these conversations? This has gone far enough, Greg. Dominic lost his job today. Alicia can't show her face anywhere in town. I'm getting divorced because my husband found out about the affair. Sounds like consequences to me. We're talking about people's lives here. Families, children, futures. You should have thought about that before you decided to destroy mine. She stared at me with something approaching hatred. You're not the man I thought you were. No, I'm not. I'm smarter, tougher, and a lot less forgiving than you gave me credit for. This isn't over, Greg. Yes, it is. And if any of you try to retaliate, I'll release everything I have. Every message, every photo, every voice recording. The whole town will know exactly what kind of people you really are. She left without another word, and I finished making my dinner in peace. Tomorrow, I'd find out if they were smart enough to cut their losses and disappear, or stupid enough to keep fighting a battle they'd already lost. Either way, I was ready. The storm started around midnight, one of those Midwestern thunderstorms that turns the sky into a light show and makes the whole house shake with each rumble. I was lying in bed, listening to the rain against the windows, when I heard the sound of breaking glass from downstairs. I grabbed the baseball bat I'd started keeping beside the bed and made my way downstairs, moving carefully in the dark. The sound had come from the kitchen, where I found a broken window and muddy footprints on the floor. I know you're in here, I called out, flipping on the lights. This is your chance to leave before this gets complicated. Too late for that, Foster. Dominic stepped out of the pantry, soaking wet and looking desperate. We're going to settle this tonight. Are we? Because breaking and entering is a felony, Dom. You sure you want to add that to your list of poor life choices? Shut up. You think you're so smart, don't you? Destroying people's lives, ruining everything you touch. I didn't ruin anything. You did that all by yourself when you decided to help my wife cheat and then threaten me in my own home. He moved closer, and I could see that he was beyond rational thought. Losing his job, his reputation, probably his marriage too, had pushed him over the edge. You recorded me, he said. Played it for everyone like I was some kind of criminal. You threatened me. What did you expect? I expected you to be a man about it. Handle this between us, not run crying to everyone in town. I laughed, which seemed to make him angrier. Handle it how, exactly? Let you and Alicia take everything I'd worked for? Pretend I didn't know about your little plan to frame me? That was never going to happen. Right. Just like you were never going to break into my house and threaten me again. He lunged at me then, moving faster than I'd expected for a man his size. But I'd been expecting it, and I sidestepped easily, letting his momentum carry him into the kitchen island. Dom, you really don't want to do this? Yes, I do. He turned around, rubbing his hip where he'd hit the counter. I want to beat the hell out of you and then tell everyone in town what a coward you really are. Okay, but just so we're clear, I'm recording this conversation too, and I have security cameras covering every inch of this house, so whatever happens next is going to be very well documented. That stopped him for a moment. You're bluffing. Am I? I pointed to the small camera mounted in the corner of the kitchen. Wave to the nice people who'll be watching this tomorrow. He looked at the camera, then back at me, confusion replacing some of the anger on his face. Here's what's going to happen, Dom. You're going to leave my house the same way you came in. You're going to go home, pack your things, and get out of town. Because if you don't, I'm going to have you arrested for breaking and entering, and then I'm going to release every piece of evidence I have about your conspiracy with my wife. I'm not going anywhere. Then you're stupider than I thought. My phone, sitting on the counter, started ringing. I glanced at the screen and saw Richard's name. Excuse me, I said to Dominic, then answered the phone. Hey, Richard. Greg, are you okay? I just drove by your house and saw someone climbing through your kitchen window. Yeah, that would be Dominic. He's here for a friendly chat about our mutual situation. Do you want me to call the police? Not yet, but stick around, okay? This might get interesting. I hung up and looked at Dominic, who was staring at me with dawning realization. Your friend saw me come in? Richard's got a good eye for detail. Former military, you know, trained observer. This is entrapment or something. No, this is you making another spectacularly bad decision, just like the affair, just like the threats, just like breaking into my house. The front door opened, and I heard footsteps in the hallway. Greg? Alicia's voice, worried and breathless. Dom's car is in your driveway. Is everything okay? She appeared in the kitchen doorway, took in the scene, and went pale. What is he doing here? She asked. Apparently settling things like a man, I said, though it's not going quite the way he planned. Dom, you idiot. I told you to stay away from here. I'm handling this, Dominic said. You're making it worse. Greg, I'm sorry. He was drinking, talking crazy, saying he was going to fix everything. Fix everything how? She looked at Dominic, then back at me. He thought if he could scare you enough, you'd back down, stop telling people about the affair. And you thought this was a good plan? No, I told him it was stupid. I told him we should just leave town, start over somewhere else. Smart advice. Too bad he didn't take it. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Mr. Foster? This is Officer Martinez with the Millbrook Police Department. We've received reports of a disturbance at your address. That's correct, officer. Someone broke into my house through the kitchen window. He's still here. Are you in immediate danger? I looked at Dominic, who was slumped against the counter, looking defeated. I don't think so, but I'd appreciate if you could send someone over to document the break-in. We're on our way. I hung up and looked at Alicia and Dominic. Police are coming. You might want to think about how you want to explain this. Greg, please, Alicia said. Don't press charges. He's lost everything already. He broke into my house and threatened me. Again. What exactly am I supposed to do with that? Show mercy. Show that you're better than us. I am better than you. That's not the point. The sound of sirens was getting closer. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows, painting the kitchen in alternating colors. Last chance, I said. You can leave town quietly, never contact me again, and I'll consider not pressing charges. Or you can try to fight this and lose everything else you have left. Dominic looked at Alicia, then at me. What about the recordings? The messages? If you disappear and stay gone, they stay private. If you don't, they become very public. The doorbell rang, followed by a heavy knock. Police, open up. I went to the front door and let them in. 2 officers, both of whom I recognized from around town. They took in the scene quickly and professionally. Mr. Foster, you reported a break-in? That's right. The gentleman in my kitchen came through the window about 20 minutes ago. They looked at Dominic, noting his wet clothes and muddy shoes, then at the broken window and the footprints on the floor. Sir, what's your name? One of the officers asked. Dominic Vega. Can you explain why you're in this man's house? Dominic looked at Alicia, who was standing frozen in the doorway. We were talking. Through a broken window? It's complicated. The officer turned to me. Do you want to press charges, Mr. Foster? I looked at Dominic and Alicia, both of them waiting for my answer. A year ago, I would have said no, would have tried to handle this quietly, avoid the scandal, protect everyone's feelings, but a year ago, I didn't know what they were capable of. Yes, I said. I want to press charges for breaking and entering, and I want a restraining order against both of them. Greg, no, Alicia pleaded. You made your choices. Now live with the consequences. The officers arrested Dominic and took statements from everyone present. Richard arrived just as they were putting Dominic in the patrol car, and he stood with me on the porch as they drove away. How do you feel? He asked. Tired, but good. Like I finally stopped letting people walk all over me. What happens now? Now they leave town or they go to jail. Either way, they're out of my life. And you? What's next for Greg Foster? I looked around at my neighborhood, at the house I'd worked so hard to buy, at the life I'd built from nothing. Now I figure out what comes after revenge. Any ideas? A few. But first, I'm going to get some sleep. It's been a long day. Richard left, and I went back inside to clean up the broken glass and call someone to fix the window. By dawn, there was no sign that anything had happened except for a small piece of plywood covering the hole where Dominic had broken in. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table, watching the sun come up over Millbrook. My phone was full of messages from people who'd heard about the arrest, but I ignored them all. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt completely at peace. The underdog had finally learned to bite back, and it felt good.